Welcome to the Geniuses of Copywriting podcast, a peek into the minds and strategies of the world's greatest copywriters, marketers, and persuasion experts. And now, here's your host, Brian Casangina.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Geniuses of Copywriting podcast. I'm really thrilled today to introduce a really exciting guest to you. So some of you may have seen this guy around, but you all know who the person is who he started out with now. We were talking about this, Caleb, at the event here in Poland, and that there's a few people sort of claiming to be, Halbert proteges, and there's a lot more of them than there are genuine ones. But I'm privileged and honoured to have a genuine Halbert protege on the line today. So, were you the first Halbert protege?
I was not. I do not know who was first, but I know that. I know who the big names were, and they were Scott Haynes, Sam Markowitz, myself. Amit Suneja was with Gary for a while as well, and those I know that there were another kind of couple, but I don't remember what their names were, and they were not kind of big figures per my relationship with Gary. They were kind of temporary guys that came in for a few weeks or whatever and left. But the guys that really got the live-in Halbert were Scott Haynes, Sam Markowitz, Amit Suneja, and myself.
Yeah. So that's those guys are really interesting. I studied Scott Haynes stuff quite a bit too, but we're here to talk about you. Everybody in this call is mostly copywriters and entrepreneurs. We all know who Gary Halbert is and the fact that he had proteges. But where did you come from, and how did you get started into this whole world?
Well, I'm from Ireland, as I'm sure people can guess from my accent, and I left school. I was a bit of a tearaway teenager, and school and all that kind of good stuff was not for me. So I actually left school. I left high school at the age of 16. Midway through high school, I became a carpenter, and quickly realized that hammering nails in the freezing cold Irish winter was not my idea of a dream life. So my older brother John. John essentially said, "Hey, listen, we're gonna become entrepreneurs. We're gonna start a business." And John had a huge career as a very high-ranking guy in Dell Computers for about 12 years. And John said to me, "Hey, I'm really good at business, at running teams, at operations, and systematizing everything. What are you good at?" And I said, "Well, pretty much nothing." And his whole thing was, "All right, well, look, if we're going to get into business, you gotta pull your weight. So, we gotta get you a mentor. We gotta get you qualified in something." And we ultimately decided on direct marketing. And the only thing I was pretty good at in school was writing. And John said, "Okay, well, look, if that's the only lifeline you have here to cling to, then how about we go get you a mentor in copywriting." And it was John that actually threw a whole bunch of Gary Halbert newsletters on the kitchen table of our home there, and said, "Hey, you need to go and make this guy your mentor." So
so going straight to the top, no messing around.
No messing around, not
at all. No fucking around at all.
Yeah. So I had been reading a book that John got me at the time. It was either Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill, or else one of Napoleon Hill's other books. But in one of those books, he told a story about some guy whose name I cannot remember, but he wanted to get a job with Thomas Edison, the guy who invented the light bulb.
That story. It was Think and Grow Rich you're talking about.
Yeah. So he sent him a letter, asking for a job, and Thomas Edison politely declined. And the guy kept sending letters, and he just became relentless and essentially, tormented Thomas Edison. And Thomas Edison stopped responding to him. And then eventually he just turned up at Thomas Edison's door. And he essentially, won Thomas Edison over, got the job, and ended up becoming a partner of Thomas Edison's. So I remember thinking to myself, all right, well, I can torment someone. So I ended up literally tormenting Halbert. I called him every day. I sent him emails. I sent him printed letters. And I just was relentless on several occasions. He told me to F off and don't ever call me. I just kept going. I just kept emailing him and calling him and sending him letters. And eventually he snapped and said, listen, I'm going to give you 3 weeks of my time. Then I never want to see you again. And the caveat is you got to send me a check for $19,000.
Mm.
I was like 20 years of age at the time. I was an out-of-work carpenter. I didn't have 19 euros, let alone $19,000. But I hung up the phone. I called my brother John, and John went and actually remortgaged his home and got the $19,000 and sent me to Miami for 3 weeks. And at the end of 3 weeks, Halbert was like, hey, you're not going back to Ireland. You're going to come and work with me. And I said, well, look, I'm broke. And he said, no worries. You can come and sleep on a pump-up mattress. And in the office, he had an apartment, and one of the rooms in his apartment he had converted into a work-at-home office.
Yeah.
And I ended up sleeping on a pump-up mattress on the floor of his work-at-home office for about 2 years. And then eventually I actually moved into an apartment of my own in the same building as his. And I stayed in that apartment for a year. So in total, I was pretty much 24/7, shoulder to shoulder with Halbert for about 3 years. And he got me into, John and he got us into direct mail. We ended up, having a very, very successful, very large health supplement business in direct mail for many years, maybe about 10 or 12 years. We then got into newspaper advertising. I was constantly writing newspaper ads for Gary. And then John and I got into newspaper advertising. We became, for about maybe 3 or 4 years there, maybe the largest newspaper advertisers in America.
Wow.
We got into CPA marketing from there, our first foray into internet marketing. We had a very, very significant business in the CPA marketing space before we realized what an awful business model that is. And we just kept going, man. We've been doing webinars and coaching and consulting, masterminds. I do a lot of video sales letters. I do a lot of webinars. We do a lot of Facebook activities. And kind of where I am today. That's how I got started. That's my backstory, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I noticed that you're one of the guys who I've studied a bit for the way you do webinars and the way you do Facebook as well. Your group ROI Tips, which we'll touch on a bit later, is one of the few Facebook groups that actually provides some real value, and it's not some thinly veiled sales pitch that is just the customer getting advice. It's one of the good groups around. So I was certainly wanting to model the way you do that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, good stuff.
So living with Gary must have been pretty interesting. It's a great tragedy that I actually never got to meet the man himself, because I certainly would have loved to have him on this show. But he is one of the guys who we've all studied, and so many of the marketing principles that we learn from other people now actually originated with him. So what's one thing that he passed on to you that really stuck and has really made a big difference in the way that you market?
Well, it's interesting. I get asked that question a lot, and if you were to maybe hear, some of my answers over the years, they would have changed, because as I kind of grow in this game and I advance in my own career, I develop new perspectives on things. But ultimately, I think the greatest thing that I learned from Gary Halbert was how to think. Gary was, a lot more than anybody knew he was. You know, if you only had an understanding of Gary through his newsletters, you actually, you know, he poured his heart and soul into his newsletters, so you did get to know a lot about him,
Yeah.
but you didn't really get to understand who he truly was. He was a genius. He really was a marketing and advertising genius. And really what I got from him was how to think. He was a strategic thinker. A lot of people think that, you know, he was a copywriter. In his own mind, he used the word copywriter because very few people could understand what he was really doing. Privately, he would call it, you know, he would tell me that he was a social engineer. And, you know, to kind of bring that term down to maybe layman's terms, you know, he was an incredible strategic thinker. He was the guy that could figure out, you know, how to sell snow to Eskimos in large volume. And you know, that there was never a problem that he could not solve. There was never a marketing challenge that he could not overcome. There was never a product that he could not sell. And you know, anybody who's kind of in the game for a very long time understands that that's a very rare thing. It's a very, very rare thing. So he was a strategic thinker. He was always switched on. He was always masterminding things. He was always planning, strategizing. And I guess really the largest, not the largest, but maybe the most, if we're to stick to business, because I ended up living with him for 3 years. So, you know, we ended up, you know, talking about life and family and money and business and friends and relationships and health and all of that kind of stuff. But if we're to just stick to business, I would say that I learned through osmosis of just being around him how to think, how to view marketing, how to perceive things, how to take an idea and see an opportunity and uncover a path for turning that idea into a successful business. You know, he always talked in terms of concepts, and he told me that, you know, the beginners are always focused on the tips and the tricks.
Yeah.
And the professionals are focused on the tactics and the strategies. But the true masters, the alchemists out there, they deal in concepts and principles because they're universal. Tips and tricks, by the time the average Joe on the street gets to learn about them, they're already old.
Yeah.
Tactics and strategies have a time limit on them. You know, just go ask anybody, you know, who was doing SEO 10 years ago if the same tactics and strategies still work. They do not. So tactics and strategies have a window of opportunity in which you can avail of them, but principles and concepts are timeless. They're also they are infinite in their application. So Gary was a guy that focused exclusively on principles and concepts. He did use tactics and strategies, tips and tricks, but his whole thing was based on concepts and principles. And as a result, he was the type of guy that could, on one day, you know, sell a health supplement, on the other day sell a newsletter, on the other day sell some gadget, you know, for helping you get to sleep. And then on another day, he could launch a coffee business. And he could do it in newspapers, he could do it in direct mail, he could do it via TV, radio, magazines, the internet. And it was all because of these universal principles and concepts, and because of his ways of thinking and strategizing. And I got that from him. I got it, as I said, through osmosis, just through being with him every single day for 3 years, watching him plan and march through just a countless number of different projects and different businesses, you know, leveraging a variety of different marketing channels. And I think that understanding, excuse me, I'm going to switch off my Skype there, apologies.
That's fine.
That understanding of principles and concepts mixed with, you know, a deep understanding of how to just strategize projects and businesses is really what I think set me up for life from that point forward.
Yeah. But there's no doubt that what you've learned from Gary, I definitely agree that being able to think in the right way is all encompassing. You can put your mind to anything, like you were saying. Gary could sell anything. There's no doubt about that. But the way you learned that from him through osmosis, not just being working with him, there's no doubt that you've sort of how do I say this? Like through your own filters, come up with your own interpretations of the ways Gary would do things. Like I was just thinking as you were talking, a lot of people would probably assume that you're doing the Facebook's groups and webinars the way Gary would be doing them if he was doing them now. And while that's probably not far from the truth, no doubt there's sort of your own personal twist in the way that you've taken Gary's lessons and expanded on them in what you're doing now. So would you say that would be the case?
Well, what I think to be true is that if you understand the high level principles of marketing and advertising, you're in a position to be an originator. You're in a position to be a person who develops new things. And the reason why you're able to do that is because, as I said, it's just these principles and concepts. I'm actually thinking of writing a book. I'll probably never get around to it, but the book will be called The Principles of Alchemy. And, it's really that, when you understand, like he never taught me this. I put my own term on it, but KLT stands for know, like, and trust. So, Gary would have used different terminology to talk about things like that. Like he would talk about being human. He talked about like, hey, one of the most effective things you can do in advertising is try and be as human as possible. Yeah. And there, like this is a principle. Now this isn't a kind of a strategic planning principle, but it is an advertising principle. If you read a lot of his ads, they're very human. They're very real. They're very raw. If you just read one of his newsletters, and you'll see exactly what I mean there. He's very human. He's very raw. He's very real. And when you can take that to any form of advertising, you're going to stand out massively from the crowd. It goes much deeper than that. The whole idea is people buy from those they know, like, and trust. Yeah. And if you know how to apply that principle, if you take it as a principle, not just like some little tip that flows over your head, you're going to be able to develop new campaigns. You're going to be able to develop new strategies. You're going to be able to develop new ways of selling people that are all based on KLT. So like I have a Facebook campaign. There's just nothing out there like it, and it's crushing it on cold traffic with ROIs that are just unheard of. And the whole thing is based on KLT. It's all about bringing people who don't know me from Adam into a group, and over a 16-day period, you build this massive, strong bond, this very deep relationship with those people, and then you sell them into, in my case, I sell them into a high-ticket coaching program, and no one is doing that. Nobody is doing that at all. And the guys that see me doing that are they're like, oh my God, where did you get this? This is the most impressive thing I've ever seen. And it comes out of a depth of knowing what these principles are. This principle of KLT: be as human as possible. Build a relationship with people, get them to know you, like you, and trust you before you sell them something. And it's very different to what everybody else is doing out there right now, because what everybody's doing is they're trying to take someone who doesn't know anything about them at all, and they're trying to shove a product down their throat and get them to buy ASAP. And what's ending up happening is, these guys can't compete because the cost of traffic is going up, the skepticism in the marketplace is going up, resistance to selling is at an all-time high. So I'm not sure what Gary would do. You know, I know that he would apply the same principles, but he was a genius. You know, so I mean, he would probably do it on a level far greater than maybe what I'm doing right now. But I guess that's a kind of a bit of an example of how you can take one principle, this principle of know, like, and trust, this understanding that people only buy from those they know, like, and trust. Breakthrough concept. It's a breakthrough principle. And when you know that and you understand that, and you understand that that is a key step in the sales process, then you can start to develop your own campaigns. You'll start to invent campaigns that are based around those principles, and then everybody else will turn around and say that you're brilliant, that you're after developing something new and exciting. But in your own mind, it's not really that new, it's not really that exciting. It's just based on a principle, a high-level principle of alchemy, you know?
Yeah, and I can see that you really embody this principle when I've seen you do Facebook Lives, and especially on your webinars. You know, we really feel like we're getting to know you, getting to like you and trust you when you go through, especially the whole process on the webinar. And that was the case as well when you did your presentation in Poland recently. You know, you did the same thing. So I could definitely see that that coming to the fore. But one of the things that I think happens a lot is people have heard this principle of maybe not described in such so as well as you have, but they've heard of the idea and they just kind of disregard it. So is that one of the areas where people mess this up when they're trying to be as human as possible with their markets, or is there something else? Is there one thing they kind of screw up all the time?
I'm not sure if there's one thing they kind of screw up all the time. You know, like the reason why I think, you know, I didn't have the luxury with Halbert to disregard anything that came out of his mouth. I think a lot of people are in a position today where they read an article or they read a little post or something, they get a good idea and they say to themselves, wow, that's a good idea. And then they get distracted by 101 things going on in their business and that idea gets thrown away.
Yeah.
I never had that luxury. Anything that Halbert told me, it needed to be done, you know, by 2 p.m. that day. And it needed to be done, you know, across hundreds of projects. So it was essentially beaten into me. Like every one of these principles, all of these concepts that I learned from Gary were everything that we were doing 7 days a week, working for dozens of clients at you know, all at the same time. So I never had the luxury to kind of listen to him and disregard or get distracted by some other stuff. It was just instilled in me. It was ingrained in everything that we were doing on a daily basis. And I think maybe that's, you know, the power of kind of, you know, being with somebody of that level and having that kind of workload. You know, he was the type of guy that if you sent him a large check, he didn't care. he'd sell whatever you wanted him to sell. You know, as long as it was an ethical thing to do. And as a result, we just ended up working on so many different projects all at the same time. So I can't say that I think that people make a mistake with that. I either think that people don't know that at all, which I think is most common, and maybe the people that do know it don't regard it in such a high way that they really sit down and ponder it. And I guess that's probably the difference.
Yeah, people just dismissing the principle as something you know, maybe a face-to-face salesperson might do, but as you've shown with your stuff, it's so important in written copy, in webinars, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I can really see that at work here.
You should. It's a breakthrough idea. Make a friend of your prospect before you make a customer of your prospect. And if you work on that, your sales will explode. It's just as simple as that. If you take the time to just work on the relationship first, it's kind of like one step back to take 10 steps forward. And very few people do it. Everybody's in a rush to bully people into buying. But
yeah, because we want to make that sale.
Yeah, but the thing is that, you know, it's you know, I got to be careful here because you know, it's not that there's different strategies for different jobs, but the reality of the modern world is that social media has taken over the modern marketing world.
Mm.
So social media has taken over, and that's changed everything, whether people realize it or not. Marketing today is not the same as marketing 20 years ago. What's changed is that everybody has become social.
Mm.
We're trained to connect with people. We're trained to, you know who they are and you know and see who they are. And if you're not like going with that you know that current, if you're trying to go against it with your marketing, if you're trying to say, hey, you don't need to know me at all, you just need to give me your money, you're going against the grain.
Mm.
Because
Mm.
people are now being programmed with social media to look up everybody, to search for the relationship, to search for the connection. And if you're not giving them that connection, if you're not giving them that relationship, you're you know, it's kind of like you're going down with a ship, you're sinking. Because, you know, here's a fact of life. As I mentioned, I kind of feel like I'm repeating myself here now, Brian, and I apologize, but
No, don't apologize.
cost of traffic is never going down. Never.
Mm.
It's never, ever, ever going down. Number one. Number two, skepticism is never going away. It's only increasing.
Mm.
Never, ever going away. It's only increasing. Resistance to hard selling is at an all-time high. It's never going to reverse. It's never going to hit a ceiling and turn around and everybody is going to become extremely, you know, open to being sold again. So these are facts of life. And the strategy of, you know, trying to take somebody and bully them into a sale immediately is the way that it was working 20 years ago. But social media has changed that now. Everybody's searching for a connection. Everybody's searching for a relationship. And if, you know, the proof is in the pudding. I do straight up selling on cold traffic in a variety of different ways. And it just does not work anywhere near as taking the time to first build a relationship. If I take 16 days to work on the relationship before selling people, my conversion rates on cold traffic eclipse anything I've ever heard from anybody else running cold traffic advertising. We're just getting such outrageously explosive ROIs that the proof is in the pudding. You don't even have to, like, it's not even Caleb, you know, spouting, you know, info. The proof is just in the ROI, you know, the ROI. It's just that it's explosive. Taking the time to develop KLT, develop that know, like, and trust factor before you sell people is an explosive thing to do.
Yeah, that's really poignant for me because when I started learning about direct marketing 15 years ago, you know, it was internet was very much in its infancy, but you know, I was learning a lot of stuff about direct mail and toll-free recorded messages, generating leads that way through newspaper ads and stuff. And the whole idea behind it was that you know, you can. They used to say you can make money in the dark. You know, you just use these tools to sell your first product on the front end, which is often hundreds of dollars, and you know, you don't need to talk to any of your customers. Your customers don't have to know anything about you, and the fact that you know, this mysteriousness of not being well known by your market actually added to you know, your selling power, but from what you've just been through, and I can see that that's very much the reality now. The opposite is true. The better they know you, the more sales you make.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's kind of it's one of many principles that you know is a part of everything I do. You know, it's just really it's just one of the the keys to success, especially I think in the modern world. Anyway, I think we've effectively murdered that one there, Brian.
No, that was good. That was really good stuff. I think everyone can really learn a lot from that, because I've certainly seen a lot of ads and campaigns where they're just going for the sale on the front end, and there's no attempt at getting to know you, which is why Facebook groups are such a powerful tool for getting to know people, and doing that process that you've mentioned a couple of times before you even try and sell them something.
Well, here's something interesting that I think a lot of people will enjoy. We are running these Facebook campaigns, converting cold traffic in very significant volume right now. And one of the things that we are learning, one of the most exciting things that we're seeing, is that when you take that time to build a relationship with your tribe, what ends up happening is not only do you convert on the front end better than, at least in my own experience, not only am I converting better than I've ever converted on cold traffic, the email list that I get, the people that don't buy that first product, it's interesting, they're not quite as profitable as a customer list, but they are very, very close to being as profitable as a customer list. Now, I'll back up and give context for that. Let's say that you have, let's say that you have 50,000 prospects on your email list that know you, okay, that know you and that like you and trust you.
Yeah.
Let's say that you have 5,000 customers. And let's say you send a promotion to both your 5,000 customers and your 50,000 prospects. Usually, in my experience, you will get a similar quantity of sales from both categories. So let's just say, for example, and I'm just making up the math here, let's say you get 100 sales from your 5,000 customers. You'll get an additional 100 sales from your 50,000 prospects. That means that the conversion rates on a list that knows you, in my experience, you need 10 times more prospects to get the same quantity of sales as you would get from a customer list. Now, here's the thing. When you focus on KLT, the same 50,000 prospect will convert if you focus on building the relationship as the primary goal of getting them in the door. You build a relationship, and after you've got a really warm, awesome relationship, then you sell them something.
Yeah.
That 50,000 prospect list can generate 3, 4, even 5 times more sales. Wow. That same prospect list can generate 3, 4, even 5 times more sales. So the email list, if you're thinking in terms of building a very, very significant business, if you're thinking in terms of, positioning your business to be as lucrative as it can possibly be, then one of the best things that you can develop is a simple thing called patience. Take the time, go through, put in the energy, invest the time, energy, and effort to starting that relationship with your prospect first. And if you do that first, even if they don't buy the first product that you have to offer, that email list will be many, many times more profitable for you than your competitor's email list will be. And this is how you develop a red hot buyer-orientated prospect list. It's all based on KLT, and I'm sorry now to be continue to harp on about it, but it's just like there's so many facets of KLT and how, like, by implementing this in your business, that it can really, really grow your business in a variety of different ways. But the interesting thing, everybody who knows what I do with those Facebook groups, that whole campaign that we've been talking about, everybody's blown away by how much the ROI that these campaigns generate. My mind is not exclusively there. My mind is, yeah, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. The real money is in the list that I have from that point forward. Because those guys know me, like me, and trust me. and therefore anything I recommend to them from that point forward is going to be met with, you know, very, very high conversion rates.
And that's really the point that people want to get to. But I think often we want to skip the work that we need to do with building that relationship because you know, if we it's not true, but it seems like, you know, if we do something to build a relationship, there's no immediate payoff with that. But it's very good that you mentioned that you need patience, which is you know, something that we lack sometimes. I've certainly lacked it at many times in my life. It's never been my strong point, but that's a very good point.
Yeah, when I say patience, I mean, you know, I'm recouping all of my traffic costs plus a very, very significant profit in 16 days.
Yeah.
You know, with that campaign. So I want to be clear in terms of patience, not like, you know, you've got to wait 12 months or something. It's just about taking the time to provide value, support people in terms of what they're trying to achieve, you know, giving them solutions to their biggest frustrations and problems, and just being an all-around outstanding person, you know. And if you just take the time to do that, it'll, you know, in what I'm doing there, it takes 16 days. There's other models, there's other business models where it's immediate in the sense that the two can coincide. So I have like another KLT business model that's based on KLT, and the whole thing is smart in terms of its execution. So you know, it's all based around you know, actually we're kind of doing it here in the sense that, like, podcast traffic, you know, is very, very valuable traffic. You know, when someone brings you onto their podcast and you know, they give you a platform to talk and present who you are and what you do and how you do it for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes. And, you know, inevitably there's a recommendation to go check out a link at the end of the podcast. Anybody who listens to you for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes, and then goes and signs up for your email list, that person is already warmed up. They're already warmed up. That's very different than someone that's never seen or heard of you before. You put them on an email list, and then your emails are full of extraordinarily high value content that people can take, make money with, you know, actionable advice or whatever it may be, excuse me, like if you're in the health space, whatever, you know, actionable, valuable content. If you are providing that in every email that goes out the door, what you're doing is you're taking a warm prospect and you're turning them red hot. And at the bottom of every one of those emails, you can promote an offer. Because here's the thing, when you have the higher your KLT is, the higher the know, like, and trust factor is with the people you serve, the less aggressive you have to be with your advertising. The more casual you can be with your advertising, because you don't need to bully people. You don't need to force people. You don't need to squeeze them and you know, like deadlines and all of this kind of stuff, and scarcity and frightening them into giving you their money. You don't have to do that. Why? Because they don't need it. They're already warm. They're already receptive. They already think you're, you know, the greatest thing since sliced bread. So all you have to do is just offer them a solution that is exactly what it is that they need. And what you've got is a really warmed up list that, you know, is receiving tremendous value from you, that is open and receptive to purchasing everything that you have to recommend. And in that way, you don't have to be a super copywriter. You don't have to be a brilliant marketer. You just have to get the concepts right.
Yeah, that's really powerful, because if we all did that a little bit better, I think we'd all do a lot better with our lists. instead of trying to skip that and go straight for the buck. But because while you were talking, I was just thinking, about all the email lists that I've signed up for in the past, including yours, and I'm thinking, I didn't sign up for the email list to be on an email list or to be in a funnel. I signed up here to learn something and get some value and get some good products and hear from you to get to know, like, and trust you. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I guess just to finish that point, you can be selling from every email. You can be selling from the very first email.
Yeah.
But it's always in the context of putting the relationship first.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the best way to learn about this is to learn by example. And the place that comes to mind for learning by example from that is your Facebook group. Like I was saying, I meant every word I said. It's one of the best groups that I've been in. So let's talk about that. You have a URL for that Facebook group?
Yeah. So if everybody wants to check out everything I've just described and everything I'm up to there, you can go to roitips.com and sign up there, and you will receive some of the very, very best tactics, strategies, principles, concepts, marketing and advertising advice that I have to offer anyway, all for free.
Yeah.
But the whole purpose of that is all based around a relationship. So, you will get the link to a Facebook group and all of that kind of good stuff. So, if people wanted to go there, then and see everything that I'm describing there and see everything that I'm doing, you can sign up there. And I would challenge you to let me know if you have found anybody that provides value on that level, anybody else that provides on that level. I would love to see who they are. So if anybody wants to go check it out, roitips.com, you can see everything I'm doing there. Yeah,
I definitely agree with that. This is what I'm talking about. Seeing what you're doing in action, in the Facebook group, ROI Tips, and roitips.com as well. I really have to strongly recommend everybody joins the Facebook group, and also first go to the roitips.com and sign up there. The content that you send out and the webinars that you do are quite valuable, and they're a great study in the art of selling in this way, building a relationship first, giving more value than anybody else. And then if we so choose, then we can invest in products as well. So that's a great place to see all this in action.
Oh,
so thank you for sharing that, Caleb. It's been extremely valuable. There's plenty of stuff here that I'm going to go and work on. I've got a book full of notes here myself. And I can't wait for everybody to hear this episode of the show. So I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for agreeing to this. You are a true genius of copywriting.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you for listening to Geniuses of Copywriting with Brian Casangina. To get the full transcript and all the resources mentioned on today's show, go to www.geniusesofcopywriting.com now.